have annotations on, you can skip ahead to everything here. Some people don't have them on. And yeah, just, it's down there. You can jump ahead to everything. Hello everybody, it's Dersh again, and I'm back with a new-ish build. First I want to apologize. I haven't been posting videos as much as I'd like because I just got the HTC Vive in, and I have been just lost in it. I've been developing for it. I've been playing games for it. That's all I've been doing with it. Seriously, it's great, and if you haven't had a chance to use one, I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, now let's get into it. So, you might know me as a guy who made the Crit Chin Soul Blast Rain Trapper build, and I'm back with a completely new, not at all similar build. I like to call the Crit Chin Soul Rain of Arrows Trapper build. Alright, we're gonna get into the build compared to the previous build and also just the general changes. So right now I'm level 86 with an 87% hit chance. My AoE Rain of Arrows is 3.6k average, and my single target does 17k. Now, this 3.6k seems to be less than the Blast Rain, because Blast Rain did, about 5 per hit, and it hit 4 times per trap, right? But it ends up being pretty much equal because of the double dipping into poison. Now, and bleed, sorry, into poison and bleed. We don't even have any damaging gems on it other than trap, which is pretty much counteracted by cluster traps. And other than that, we're not even using increased crit. We're using increased AoE because the AoE of Rain of Arrows just isn't great on its own. And I'm still like up to tier 14 maps, one-shotting packs. Right, the only time I haven't been one-shotting packs is I ran a Village Ruin with Enfeeble and a reduced crit damage taken for monsters, and I still finished it. It was easy, but it just took a little bit longer than I would have liked. In single target setup, I used Deerstalker for, and that's just as much damage as you can get. Trap in Mine, Physical Projectile, Rain of Arrows, and Conk Effect. Or you can switch it out for fast-moving enemies who, by the time Rain of Arrows goes up and lands, they're out of the way. You switch that with Puncture and increased crit, just because you want the same colors. Otherwise, it'd probably be Puncture and, say, I don't know, something else. But what you get is an insane amount of damage. Like, the single target is unreal. It kind of just wipes the floor with everything. Like, just wipes them out, and it's a lot better than the previous one in terms of offense and defense. Defense-wise, we have Grace running, so we have 35% evade chance, as well as acrobatics and phase acrobatics, and Enfeeble. And Enfeeble is integral. I've come to realize how important it is. It's very, very important. Just use it. Use it. I'd even use it on the other build now instead of Herald Device because it's just so good. With respect to gearing, everything is pretty much the same. The only real change is instead of flat elemental damage, you want flat physical damage. That's honestly it. You have the same core items, and you want accuracy, life, and resists, and physical damage, and crit multiplier if you can get it, which I couldn't at the time. And that's it. With respect to the skill tree, it's again almost the exact same. It's pretty easy to spec from one to the other. Outside of the Ascendancy respec, which is the most expensive part, you'll only need to respec another 10 or 15 points. The elemental damage we don't get. Instead, we get the physical and chaos here. We don't get this chunk of elemental damage. We instead go for Force Shaper. We don't get this chunk here, though you could get these 2 nodes because it adds quite a bit of damage, but I opted to just fill out health instead. And everything else all the way till over here is about the same. The only difference is we need 4 jewel sockets, so we grab this one over here as well, because we need 4 coated shrapnels to make sure we poison. The poisoning is the bread and butter of the build, and that's because of all the double dipping that occurs. So we have, the poison on hit doesn't matter here, the chance, but the bleeding on hit is useful, as well as the maim on hit, and then you deal 100% more of each, pretty much guaranteed almost, especially the poison, because you're pretty much guaranteed a crit, especially if they're on full life. And if not, just throw on a Diamond Flask and you'll be at, let's see, right now we're at 41, you'll be at around 60 something, right? With the lucky crit chance. And that pretty much one-shots almost anything that I've come across, especially with 3 traps down, with either Puncture or Rain of Arrows especially. We also have Vol Lightning Trap because we're not using Vol Burning Arrow, so the souls can just go from there to here, and that makes you do even more damage against bosses. You can spec out of Coated Shrapnel if you switch out for Cospre's Will. I can't afford that right now, but if you can afford it, I'd go for it. And then you could spec out of these and either replace them with trap damage and life jewels, or just get rid of these points entirely and go into the health here, fill out some damage here and here, and you'll be in good shape. Now, I want to go over why I'm not using Cheap Construction and Sunblast, because I know that's going to come up at some point, so I want to get that out of the way. I was using it for a long time, up to level, say, 73. Even the first time I did the Uber Lab, I was still using it. And it's not consistent. It's not consistent, and I love consistency. I hate sometimes doing the damage and sometimes not. I want to do the damage as often as possible. And the reason it's not consistent is because, yes, you have 100% reduced trap trigger time, and it'll go off after 0 seconds. But the second you kill something that's maimed, you gain 30% increased skill effect duration for 4 seconds. And 30% increased skill effect duration gives you a 4.8 second trap cooldown. So yeah, it's not great. It's honestly not good, especially in situations where you direly need to do some damage, and it'll get dangerous if you don't. It doesn't come through. First, I spec'd out into Hair Trigger, and I tried to go for, say, these nodes over here to get some radius down, and it still wasn't great. So instead, I opted for speccing out of all of those entirely, and just using a single target setup, and it's been fantastic. Best one by far. So, in conclusion, this build, compared to the other build, does much more damage, is much tankier, and the only real downside is that it doesn't clear as fast, but it's almost negligible. They clear pretty much equivalently. It's a bit more expensive. You're looking at going from 25 chaos to about 60, but it's still under an exalt for just massacring everything. The reason for the price jump is specifically because of Coated Shrapnel. And you could honestly start spec'ing into the other one if you go with Assassin anyways, and spec into this once you can afford Coated Shrapnel without much effort at all. So we're going to get into the maps. I'm going to start with a palace map, a Twinned Palace map, and explain how that went. We're going to go into Atziri, the Pale Court, and finally the full Kira and Merciless Uber Lab, that I just did recently that went without a hitch. I'd actually done the Twinned Palace at level 84 before I'd gotten Phase Acrobatics, and I have a bit less life, as you can see, and it still went pretty easily. The bosses went pretty well as well. I didn't have All Lightning Trap yet. I hadn't chosen to use it yet, so that would have been very useful here. And I'd gotten one of them into the second form before the other, so the timing was pretty poor. But all in all, it went pretty well. I didn't ever really get too close to dying, and I definitely could have done this quicker and played it better because there was no life or mana regen, which I'm not used to at all, so I ran around like an asshole for a bit, not throwing out anything while I tried to throw out traps with no mana. And as a reminder, you can get to the full run down below. Atziri is the easiest it's ever been with this build, between the two. The second bosses, the trio, I did have a bit of a hitch on the last guy just because I messed up my placement of traps, but nothing crazy, just took a bit longer than I would have liked. Both of the builds, however, are pretty much Atziri viable, they kill at almost the same rate, so you can kind of pick whichever one you want for that, but this does definitely do more damage. You can see Atziri just gets down to 0 health almost every single time before going into a split phase. Some people don't think it's worth it to do Atziri because you might sell them for more than it's worth, but, one can never have too many Amethyst Flasks. Between the two builds, this one is likely going to be able to do Uber Atziri with a 4-link, given that the other one was very close and did nowhere near the single target damage that this one does. I did find Immortal Hope recently. I'm very happy about that, and I'm going to do Uber Atziri at some point, but I want to make sure I have a 6-link handy just in case I can't do it with the 4-link, because I don't have enough currency to go around wasting, 3 exalts. So yeah, for under 1 exalted, you have someone that can massacre Atziri every single time, and you can do under 5-minute runs if you're good enough. Again, the full run is in the description down below, as well as on the screen now. The Pale Court actually went worse than it did on the other guy. I was really tired though. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning at this point. And even in the video, if you, again, click down below, you can go to it, you'll see that I was talking really lowly because people were asleep. That being said, having them move around while I throw a trap is kind of shitty, and when you throw cluster traps with the other build and they all go off with Saboteur, ice cream truck! Okay, I'm back. Anyways, yeah, it's better with the other build, but it's not hard with this build. It just takes a bit more time than it would with the other one. I recommend doing the Pale Council and not selling off the pieces, specifically if you're into not ever getting the Reach of the Council and just want a bunch of 1 Chaos items. Once again, the full run is down below in the description as well as on the screen right now. The Uber Lab went splendidly well in the full key run. You'll see like Argus is nothing. You just walk around with the puncture traps up. And honestly, the same thing with his RO. This was the first phase was Lieutenants and second phase was the Essences. So the first phase you just down him as quickly as possible. And in the second phase you gotta run around for a while and make sure he absorbs all the Essences. But it's not too much work, to be honest. I do swap out for Puncture during the Uber Lab and any Labyrinth because they are quick as RO and Argus, and they'll probably dodge a rain of arrows. So Puncture works out a lot better for that. This run took about 17 minutes compared to the 31 minutes that the Elemental version of the build did, and I would never do a full key run on that character. On this character, however, you can farm it relatively easily. So that covers pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. If you do have any questions, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, stay tuned because I'll be making more in the near future.